A child's brain is being built every single day during those early years, like constructing a house from the ground up. But when trauma enters the picture, it's like building that house during an earthquake. The foundation cracks, the walls go up crooked, and the entire structure becomes unstable. I learned this the hard way when I fostered a 6-year-old who had experienced severe neglect. Her behaviors confused me until I understood what was actually happening inside her brain. Inside her brain. Once I saw the science behind childhood trauma, everything changed, not just how I parented her, but how I understood child development entirely. What I'm about to share will shift how you see children who've been through hard things. If you're a parent, teacher, or caregiver who wants to understand how trauma affects children and what actually helps them heal, hit that like button and subscribe because this information is critical and it's backed by decades of neuroscience research. Let me start with what trauma actually is because many people misunderstand this. Trauma isn't just major events like abuse or witnessing violence, though those absolutely qualify. Trauma is any experience that overwhelms a child's ability to cope and leaves them feeling helpless, terrified, or unsafe. That can include things like neglect, losing a parent, chronic family conflict, medical procedures, natural disasters, bullying, or even moving frequently and losing stability. What makes something traumatic isn't the event itself, it's how that child's nervous system responds and whether they have support to process what happened. Here's what happens in the brain when a child experiences trauma. Their survival systems get activated. The amygdala, which is the brain's alarm center, starts firing constantly, looking for threats everywhere. The body floods with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. In the short term, this is protective. It helps the child survive danger. Brain scans of children who've experienced chronic trauma show measurable differences compared to children who grew up in safe, stable environments. And these aren't small differences. We're talking about structural changes in brain size, connectivity between regions, and how different areas communicate with each other. The first major impact is on the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and learning. Chronic stress and elevated cortisol actually shrink the hippocampus. This is why traumatized children often struggle in school, not because they're not smart, but because their memory systems aren't functioning optimally. They might forget instructions, have trouble retaining information, or seem like they're not paying attention when really there. Brain is using all its resources to scan for danger instead of focusing on learning. The second impact is on the prefrontal cortex, the brain's control center that manages impulse control, decision-making, planning, and emotional regulation. Children who've experienced trauma often struggle with impulsivity, emotional outbursts, difficulty making good decisions, and problems with executive function skills. Again, this isn't a choice or bad behavior. Their brain literally didn't get to develop these control systems properly because it was stuck in survival mode. In traumatized children, this alarm goes off constantly, even when there's no real danger. This is why these children might seem overly reactive, anxious, or aggressive. They're not trying to be difficult. Their brain is genuinely perceiving threat when none exists, and their body is responding accordingly. What's heartbreaking is how this affects a child's entire life experience. Imagine going through your day with an alarm blaring in your head, and reacting intensely to situations that others find minor. That's the daily reality for traumatized children. And then they get labeled as problem kids, difficult, disruptive, or troubled, when really they read children whose brains are trying to protect them from dangers that may not even be present anymore. Take a moment and drop a comment below. Have you worked with or parented a child who's been through trauma? What's been your biggest challenge or question? I want to hear from you. Now here's where it gets really important, and this is the part that gives me hope. The brain has something called neuroplasticity, which means it can change and rewire itself based on new experiences. Childhood trauma changes the brain, but healing experiences can change it back. The younger the child, the more plastic their brain is, which means early intervention makes a massive difference. First, safety is absolutely foundational. A traumatized brain cannot heal while it's still in survival mode. That child needs consistent, predictable, safe relationships and environments. This means stable caregivers who are calm, reliable, and attuned to the child's needs. It means routines and structure so the child's brain can stop scanning for what unexpected thing might happen next. It means physical safety, emotional safety, and the felt sense that adults are in control and keeping them protected. Second, connection and attunement. Trauma often happens in the context of relationships, and healing happens in relationships too. When a caring adult consistently responds to a child's needs with warmth and understanding, it teaches that child's nervous system that people can be safe. This is called co-regulation. The adult's calm, regulated nervous system helps regulate the child's dysregulated system. Over time, the child internalizes this and learns to self-regulate. I saw this with my foster daughter. When she first arrived, she would have explosive meltdowns over tiny things. A wrong color plate, a slight change in schedule, anything could set her off. My instinct was to correct the behavior, but once I understood her brain was in threat mode, I changed my approach. During meltdowns, I stayed calm and close. I'd say softly, "You're safe, I'm here, we're going to get through this together." I didn't try to reason with her or teach lessons in those moments. I just offered my calm presence. Third, helping children process and make sense of their experiences. Trauma gets stuck in the brain partly because it often can't be verbally processed, especially if it happened when the child was very young. Therapies like play therapy, art therapy, and trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy help children express and work through traumatic memories in age-appropriate ways. This processing is crucial for moving trauma from the reactive, emotional parts of the brain to the thinking, narrative parts where it can be integrated as something that happened in the past rather than something happening right now. Fourth, teaching and building skills that trauma disrupted. Remember how trauma affects the prefrontal cortex and executive function. Traumatized children need explicit teaching and practice with emotional regulation strategies, problem solving, impulse control, and social skills. Not through punishment when they mess up, but through patient repeated teaching and modeling. It's like physical therapy for the brain. You're strengthening neural pathways that didn't develop properly the first time around. What's as crucial for every adult to understand is that healing from childhood trauma isn't fast and it's not linear. There will be progress and setbacks. A child might do really well for weeks and then have a massive regression. That doesn't mean the healing isn't working. That's actually a normal part of the process. The brain needs time and repetition to build new patterns. I also want to address something important. If you experience trauma in your own childhood, hearing about how it affects the developing brain might be painful. You might be thinking about ways your own brain was impacted. Please hear this. The same neuroplasticity that helps children heal applies to adults too. It's never too late to heal. Therapy, safe relationships, and new experiences can rewire your brain at any age. Understanding the impact of trauma isn't about blame or excuses. It's about compassion for the children we're raising and for ourselves. The reason I'm so passionate about sharing this information is because understanding changes everything. When you understand that a child's difficult behavior is actually a traumatized brain trying to survive, you respond with compassion instead of punishment. When you understand that emotional outbursts are nervous system dysregulation, not defiance, you focus on co-regulation instead of consequences. When you understand that learning struggles come from stress impacting the hippocampus, you provide support instead of pressure. This understanding creates the environment where actual healing can happen. If this video opened your eyes to how trauma affects children, please share it with other parents, teachers, or caregivers who need this perspective. Drop a comment and tell me what surprised you most or what question you still have about trauma and the developing brain. And subscribe because we're creating a community that understands child development at a deeper level and supports healing instead of just managing behavior. Thank you for being here and for caring enough to learn about this. Every child deserves adults who understand what they're going through and respond with compassion and knowledge. You're becoming that adult, and that matters more than you know.